two things that I felt you had to do in order to walk through those tough times and get to the other side. Welcome to the High Vibe Life podcast, where we are obsessed with all things manifestation, neuroscience, personal growth, and quite simply, living a life beyond our wildest dreams. I'm Moira, author, speaker, podcaster, manifestation, and mindset master. Since getting sober 25 years ago, I've helped tens of thousands of women break through and achieve massive levels of wealth, joy, and freedom. Now it's your turn. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the High Vibe Life podcast with me, Moira. I am excited, should I say? I think I say that a lot. I know I say that a lot. I am excited to chat with you today. I'm also just following what I really feel like God, the universe, is calling me to share about today. So this is a topic that I've definitely done a podcast on in the past about, and I likely did a podcast on this when I was out of the bad season, the hard season. And I'll tell you this. So the last couple weeks, I've been walking through some really, really hard stuff. And it just gives me immense empathy for the world, for what we don't know, what anyone is walking through any day of the week, right? And I've shared this a lot with like the day that I remember flying home to attend, or I guess after my sister passed away, I was flying home because of that. And I remember walking through the airport. I remember it so vividly. It's something I'll never forget. I remember being in the TSA line, and ironically, there were two sisters in front of me. But what I remember is just almost having an out-of-body experience and kind of floating above, and, you know, the world's going on around me and people are irritated with each other, or, you know, complaining about something or this or that. And here I am, like, making my way through hundreds, thousands of people, really, when you get to the bigger airports, carrying in that moment the death of my sister, flying home to attend my sister's funeral. And what that day gave me in the gift was, you never have any idea what the cashier's going through, what the person standing behind you in the TSA line is going through, anywhere. We never have any idea what people are walking through. And so these last couple weeks, walking through the hard has just cracked my heart wide open for the pain that so many people carry on a regular basis. Or, you know, whether you're walking through a divorce, whether you're walking through abuse, whether you're walking through addiction. And I was thinking back to an episode that I did, ironically. I scrolled back on my podcast this morning and I was like, man, that episode was literally almost exactly this time of year, a year ago. And the reason I actually remember that episode was the response that I got from that episode. And a lot of people writing in, texting me, DMing me, commenting about how much it resonated. And really all it was the two things that I felt you had to do in order to walk through those tough times and get to the other side. And back then, and I actually was like totally tearing up remembering this and hearing this, because I went back and listened to the episode this morning. And yeah, I'm telling you these same two things a year later instead of just giving you that old episode, because it bears repeating and I want to layer in some more stuff. And as I was listening to that episode, my daughter was really, we as a family were walking through a lot of tragedy. And I'm like, it was kind of eye-opening to hear this morning, because I'm like, man, that was only a year ago. And we got through it. And in fact, forgot about it, kind of. You know, you get to the other side of things. But man, when you're in it, you don't feel like you're getting to the other side of things. And so here's the two things. We're going to start with the first one. And this is where I found myself last week. And really both of the two things I want to tell you are intertwined. But the first one is that when you are walking through a tough season and just the hard, you have to talk to somebody. You have to talk to multiple people, possibly. You have to pull in every voice, every support, every relationship, every professional that you need to pull in. And the more, the better. The more, the better. And so for me, last week, I often laugh at my own self sometimes when I'm going through really tough seasons because I don't think anybody has any idea just how many stops I pull out. Like I pull out all the stops sometimes. And I'm like, gosh, some people probably think like, maybe I just went to therapy once and like kind of worked through it. And I'm like, hate to break it to you, but it's never that easy. So last week I reached out to a couple of my girlfriends and I was talking to them. I reached out to my sponsor in the 12-step rooms and I had a long conversation with her. I reached out to a friend of mine who's actually an expert in this area and got on the phone with her on a Saturday afternoon and talked for 90 minutes. And then I called another girlfriend and I lined up just going over to her house on Saturday night and like talking this through for hours. And so I really went in this deep dive of like talking to so many different people. And I feel like the space I was in Friday night to the space I was in Saturday night was so radically different. But it wasn't just that I felt better. I had, gone down the rabbit hole of maybe I'm going to do this and we're going to put that into place. And no, actually, that's not going to work. And let's go down this possibility. And let's, there were so many different roads that I went through. Like if it makes sense, I worked through what maybe could have taken me 6 months, I feel like in 24 hours. And so you arrive not only at this good feeling place, but you actually have done the work the more time you spend talking it through. And, I was listening to the podcast that I did a year ago when I was really not only walking through it myself, but my daughter was walking through one of the toughest seasons of her life up until that point. And I wanted to teach her not only to talk to me, right? Like I'm not just going to say, you got to talk this out. But I encouraged her and maybe texted somebody on the side and said, hey, will you reach out to Coco? Like, can you reach out and just, be there? And so she went and talked to me and her girlfriends and her trusted, teachers at school and these adults in her life that she has that can come alongside her because it takes a village. And so I want to encourage you as moms to also not only model this for our children, but to teach our children this. It's so important. It is so important. I will actually link last year's episode in the show notes for you because I don't want to repeat everything in there. But man, it was so good. I think about my sister and her death, and I think, what if she had just talked to somebody? What if she had just talked to somebody? It could have been so different. What we have to understand is the moments make the decisions, which make our life, right? In the moment, we can pick up the phone or we can make a really bad decision. And the more people you have in your corner supporting you, the better. And so that's number one. Talk to people, but talk to all the people. All the people. You can't talk to too many people, right? You can't have too many therapy sessions about it. You can't talk to too many friends about it. I know how hard that can be sometimes. I know that we get stuck, and this is leading me into point 2. We can get stuck in the busyness of life. And sometimes people are coming at you. People are talking to you. Like, I know sometimes my husband's like, hey, babe, what's for dinner? What you got? Are you picking up the kids? What time's the game? And I'm struggling. And I don't even have it in me to say, I'm struggling, right? Like it doesn't seem like the time to say, hello, I need help. And so sometimes we just need to text somebody, right? We need to text a few friends to say, hey, I know we're all talking about like Saturday night plans or whatever, but like just 2 words, I'm struggling. Heads up. I'm not good, right? Just cast the net. You don't have to have the conversation. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole, but you need to let people know where you are. And so this goes into point number 2. And I feel so strongly about this. We have to give ourselves permission to stop. Permission to stop. Permission to not have to go into work, to not record the podcast, to not return the phone calls, to not pick up the kids. So often we aren't attending to the most important thing we have to attend to, which is our mental and emotional health, because we're busy, right? And I always think about, God knows I've had too much tragedy in my life. I've gotten too many phone calls where the whole world stops, right? Where somebody's in the hospital, there's been an accident, and you don't go into work, you don't pick up the kids, you ask for help. You reach out and your village swoops in and your whole world comes to a screeching halt, and you go attend to the pain, the problem, the tragedy. But we don't give ourselves that grace when we are in so much pain that we have to attend to. We have to give ourselves permission to stop. And this is what I remember, and this is what I was hearing in that podcast episode from last year. I remember my poor daughter getting in the car one day after school, hyperventilating, crying her eyes out because she was dealing with so much just tragedy. There was a lot of tragedy in our lives, not in our family, but right around our family. And her poor little 14-year-old self, right, trying to carry that and make sense of all of it. And I said, you're not going to dance today. And she immediately like, I have to go. You know, there's a competition. It's mandatory. I'm like, listen, sister, it's not mandatory for me. It's not mandatory for you. You're not going. You're not going to dance. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. Not as a punishment, but as permission to stop. Permission to pause. Permission to attend to our hearts and our pain. It is the most important thing. You don't need to continue going to class when you're not mentally well, right? And so talk to people, stop, and just work on the underlying issue. Otherwise, it's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and get to a breaking point where life forces you all of a sudden to listen. So the other piece that I want to add into this is what I always teach, and I've taught this on a podcast before too, but the 4 things you should do when you're making a tough decision. Because so often pain, immense pain, we're definitely usually faced with, what do I do? How do I handle the situation? Where do I go next? Do I stay in the job or do I quit the job? Do I stay in the relationship? Do I end the relationship? Do I, whatever it is, how do I know what to do? And so 4 things when we're doing this, right? We're walking through decision. Number 1, we got to pray about it. And it's crazy because that seems so right? So easy, so trite, so like, well, of course we do. When you're in it, when you're in the pain, when I'm in the pain, I always literally forget. It's like I will pray every single day that life is good and fine, and I am handing it over, and I am trusting God, and I am seeking His direction. The second I get into a lot of pain, I take it back. And I forget about surrendering it to God. I forget about turning it over. I forget that I have this incredible source in my life that I get to pray to about the problem. Free me from this burden. Take away my pain. Help me to see the direction I'm supposed to go in, right? Now, I'm sharing these 4 because this is the 4 I always teach. I already said the second one. Seek wise counsel. That's what I always say. Pray about it. Seek wise counsel. Well, if you're talking to people, you are seeking wise counsel. Obviously, maybe I should have said it without saying it though. We don't want to talk to people that are just going to fan the flame or help us feel better about things. We want to seek wise counsel, right? That's why professionals and therapists and things like that come in handy so much, right? We want to seek wise counsel. Number 3, this comes from my mama, let the sun go down on it for 3 nights. Let the sun go down on it. Time reveals a lot. Time allows us to step out of the negative emotion and the obsession, right? The overthinking, and gives us perspective. And 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you're going to arrive at a place of clarity and of decision 3 days later that you couldn't see because of the forest for the trees, right? When you are obsessing on something and you are angry and you're frustrated and you're wrapped up in emotion, you literally cannot see the direction. I think about this all the time, when I talk about the emotional ladder, the vibrational ladder. For some of you guys, that's a whole nother podcast, but I talk about it a lot. When you're on the lower end of the ladder in these negative emotions like anger and, doubt and fear and all of these negative emotions, I always picture the ladder just up against a building. And you're like literally looking at the brick building. Like that's as far as you can see. But when you start to climb up this ladder of emotion, of vibration, and you get above the building, you can see what you couldn't see at the bottom, right? You see a different perspective. So probably one of the most wise pieces of advice my mother left me with in her lifetime, in my lifetime, is let the sun go down on it for 3 days, which is hard. Don't make a quick decision. And then number 4, get in the Word. Get in the Word, get in the Bible, get in Scripture, see where that's guiding you to, right? Very similar to seeking wise counsel, but we're actually getting in the Word. So I'm going to recap those for you today. So the 2 most important things to do when you're in pain, when you're having a really hard season, is talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. Guys, I'm telling you that every suicide, every addiction, every affair wouldn't have happened if somebody was talking to enough people. Connection is literally the opposite of addiction. Talk to as many people as you can. Number 2, give yourself permission to stop. Give yourself permission to get off the merry-go-round of life and attend to the pain. And then the 4 steps, the 4 things you want to do when you're faced with a decision, which again, we often are in those times, in those seasons, is seek wise counsel. We just talked about that one. Pray about it. Get in the Word. And let the sun go down on it for 3 nights. I really hope that this episode just gives you some guidance, gives you some solutions, gives you some direction. I know that there's probably people in your life that need to hear those things and those options, right? Those actions. So pass this episode along to anybody. Pass it along to your kids. I've had so many of my friends share the past episode with their college kids. We need to not only model this, but we need to pass it on for our kids. Thanks for joining, you guys. I will see you next week. Bye.